Boston Celtics. They have been in a funk. They've spent the last month and a half hovering around 500. Recent bad losses to the Cavs, to the Kings. Now, we know Danny Ainge is going to be attached to almost every trade rumor out there. But, Jackie, how should the Celtics shake things up at the deadline? Because Brian Windhorst was on the show yesterday and says he believes that Marcus Smart would be available in an Aaron Gordon trade, which, of course, has gotten a lot of Celtics faithful very concerned.
Right. So, listen, the Celtics have to do something. And as you know, in-season trades for Danny Ainge, not the norm. The last big one he made was 2015 when he brought Isaiah Thomas over. This team has to do something. There's a malaise over this team. They're one of the worst fourth-quarter teams in basketball. And also, more importantly to me, there's a restlessness about this team. You've got two young stars that are saying, hey, man, I need some help. So you've got to get them help. I don't know about the Marcus Smart part. I respect Brian's reporting very much. What my intel tells me is they would prefer to use draft picks and a young player, a draft pick and a young player, to get Aaron Gordon free. Of course, they don't want to trade Marcus Smart because he's often been called the heartbeat of that team, and I think that's an accurate description in many ways. What I'm interested to see is, do they try to expand that trade and have it Aaron Gordon and Evan Fournier, who's on an expiring contract? They need shooting. They need a big defensive wing that can guard out there on the perimeter, things they have not had since Gordon Hayward left last summer. So I'll be absolutely shocked if they don't do anything. This is not one of those times. Here's the difference, though. Usually Danny Ainge has a treasure trove of draft picks. Not this time, Rachel. As you know, they have their own picks and some protected second-round picks, but they don't have the abundance of first-round picks that they've had in the past, and yet they've got to do something to shake up this team because this team is drowning.
Yeah, it's tough because you expect guys like Jaylen Brown, like you said, you want an Aaron Gordon to help with the bigger defense. But, that's what, Jaylen Brown was turning to. I'm not saying that he's turning to more of an offensive focus, but, his offensive numbers have been through the roof. He was an all-star this year. Not having that versatility down the line, not having Gordon Hayward, people don't understand the value that he brought to the game. But I just think, I don't know, when there was John Collins, there's Biggs, there's people that they're talking about, but Marcus Smart, it's hard to find players. You can fill a need, you can fill a big, you can fill shooting, but how often do you find, we got to find some heart and toughness? And that's what Marcus Smart brings. So I just think you try and do everything you can to avoid giving him up.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will, by the way. But if they have...
I don't think Marcus Smart...
You don't... Yeah? Jackie?
I don't think Marcus Smart is going straight out with Aaron Gordon. I really don't believe. I don't think in the end that's what they'll do. I think they'll try use a draft pick, maybe 2 first-round picks if they have to, but I think they prefer a first-round pick and a young player, maybe like Aaron Nesmith or something like that.
I think you see, obviously how important Gordon Hayward was to this team. Obviously, he wasn't the scorer he was in Utah with this team, but he was very important on both ends. But also at the same time, if you look at this roster, outside of Gordon Hayward, they still have a very solid roster. And Jackie, when you say restlessness, some of that lies on the coach. And you see over in Atlanta what Nate McMillan's been able to do with this Hawks team. They're 8-1 since him taking over. Does some of this fall on the coach's shoulders? I know with Gordon Hayward over there were some rumblings in the locker room about favoritism, and maybe Brad Stevens isn't the guy that's going to be holding guys accountable and really making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing on the court. I like this team. I trust Danny Ainge and his moves, but at the same time, I think some of this lies on Brad Stevens, and sometimes the new voice in the locker room helps a lot.
Jackie, what's the pressure on Brad Stevens right now in Boston?
Yeah, I think when teams lose, everyone has to take responsibility. And of course, if your team isn't performing in the fourth quarter, some of that falls on the coach. This is the one thing I tell everybody about Brad Stevens, though. One of the criticisms has been, well, he doesn't get in their faces. He doesn't show emotion. And I can tell you from talking to these players, what you see out on the court, what you see on your television broadcast is not necessarily what's happening. There are times when guys come off the court and he's under his breath saying, you really messed that up. We're going to, so to say that Brad Stevens isn't trying to motivate them, that isn't holding them accountable, I don't really think that's entirely accurate. I'm not sure that, in my mind anyway, Brad Stevens isn't your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is you need wing defenders, you need better shooters, you need help for these two young guys who are playing too many minutes now with Jaylen Brown, by the way, with a knee that is a little cranky from time to time.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.